Hello, this is Russell from the Tate Geological Museum, and today I'm going to be showing you a few more hominids, members of our own family. The most famous of the extinct hominids, and the first one to be discovered, is Neanderthal man, Homo Neanderthalensis. Sometimes they're called cavemen. It's not a very good name because they didn't all live in caves. Come to think of it, they weren't all men either. That would be a very short-lived species if you think about it. And there's some debate as to whether they constitute a different species, in which case they would be Homo Neanderthalensis, or whether they're simply a subspecies of our own modern species, Homo sapiens. So in that case, our species would be Homo sapiens sapiens, and this would be Homo sapiens Neanderthalensis. Now, whether you choose to classify it as a species or a subspecies, they were very similar to modern human beings. You see a lot of things about cavemen in cartoons and comic books that are just dead wrong. They're often portrayed as these pea-brained, knuckle-dragging troglodytes, but in reality, the position of that foramen magnum, the hole on the underside of the skull, shows us that they were standing upright. The spinal column would have been coming up vertically from below, and they walked on two legs, just like you and I. No knuckle dragging for them. And second of all, they are not pea-brained. As a matter of fact, their brains are just as big as the brains of modern humans, and this specimen, the La Ferracie specimen from France, actually has a cranial capacity of 1,600 cubic centimeters, which is slightly higher than the modern human cranial capacity of 1,400 cubic centimeters. Now, I don't know if they thought worse than modern humans, but they did think differently. For example, we don't find paintings of mammoths and woolly rhinos on Neanderthal cave walls. All of those were done by Cro-Magnon man. And Cro-Magnons were our own species, Homo sapiens, anatomically modern. It's often said that you could take a Cro-Magnon man and give him a shave and dress him up in a suit and tie and put him on the subway, and nobody'd give him a second glance. That's almost undoubtedly accurate. They looked just like you and me. Now, this is not necessarily as true for Neanderthals. If you put a Neanderthal in a suit and put him on the subway, he'd still get some strange looks. Maybe no stranger than Ron Perlman gets when he takes the subway. But there were some differences. For one thing, modern humans have a forehead. Not so the Neanderthals. Behind the eyebrows, the skull sweeps straight back. Also, we modern humans have a chin, more prominent in some people than in others, but it's there. No chin on the Neanderthals, and the face projects forward more than it does in a modern human. For a long time, nobody knew what to make of Neanderthal bones. Some people thought that they were the bones of Cossack soldiers who pursued Napoleon's army out of Russia and then got lost in caves and died there. One fellow said that it was a powerfully built Celt with a low level of mental organization, something like a modern Irishman. His words, not mine. And still another person proposed that it was just a modern human, but one that had suffered from rickets and arthritis and several blows to the head during the course of its life. Eventually it was recognized that they are their own subspecies or species. Another famous hominid that you'll hear discussed in any discussion of paleoanthropology, Homo Habilis. These date from about 1.8 million years ago. They are the earliest hominids known to have used stone tools. The first one was found by Louis Leakey's son, Johnny, and was named Johnny's child. That one was just a mandible. This one was named Twiggy. When the skull was first found, it was flattened out by depositional processes and had to be reconstructed. When Louis Leakey saw that specimen for the first time, he said, "Wow, that's flat. That's really flat. Not since Twiggy has anybody been that flat." Kids, get mom and dad to explain that joke to you. The best known of the habilis skulls is KNMER 1470, although recently it's been suggested that this is a different species altogether, and that is Homo rudolfensis. Nevertheless, it's definitely closely related to habilis and gives us a good idea of what a full-sized and largely complete habilis cranium would look like. And then this is also Homo habilis, much smaller, however. The eruption of the wisdom teeth and the wear on these molars show us that it was fully adult, so it may be that female Homo habilis were much smaller than the males. That's called sexual dimorphism, and you see that today in other primates like orangutans and gorillas. But probably the most famous hominid specimen of all is Lucy from the Afar triangle of Ethiopia. This was found by Donald Johanson in the 1970s. And Lucy's head was a little bit of a disappointment. He found the mandible and some parts of the cranium, but not a complete skull. And so it would have to wait until later before it was realized what the complete skull of an Australopithecus afarensis, that's the species name that was given to Lucy and her relatives, would look like. But the most important part of Lucy was below the neck. This is the femur of Lucy. And unlike a chimpanzee, which has the condyles at the distal end of the femur at a right angle relative to the shaft, in Lucy, they're turned diagonally so that she could carry the knees directly below her center of gravity. And that way she could walk with the feet right down underneath her like you and I do. Your femur looks like this. It's a bit bigger, depending on how old you are, but it's got that same structure there for carrying your knees directly under your center of gravity. When Johanson found this, he asked his friend Owen Lovejoy of Kent State University, "Are you sure this could walk bipedally?" And Lovejoy said, "My friend, it could walk bipedally. If you could explain to her what a hamburger was, she'd beat you to the nearest McDonald's 5 times out of 10.